Welcome back to the Hockey Show, and today we are talking about the Boston Bruins, a team that has really become the new sort of San Jose Sharks, I guess is kind of the way I kind of describe them. A team that has like a very obvious core of who they keep every year, a defenseman that you know them for, a goaltender, good swings, always a playoff team, always know they're going to get in and maybe has a good chance to go far, but is going to fall short every single time to a team that is just better than them because they are just not over the top. So that is the story. So let's kind of dissect this team. And before we get any farther, you should subscribe, because why the hell not? But anyways, it also would make me so happy. Like, you see the smile? Wouldn't you want it more? Then subscribe. But anyways, the Boston Bruins this season, 47-20-15, off of one season off from winning the President's Trophy, not just in any normal fashion, winning it in the most glorious fashion ever, winning it with the best season record of all time, and of course they lose to the Florida Panthers 2 years in a row now, while also finishing in the top end of the league. From last year's President's Trophy in the first round to the second round, finishing 7th in the NHL with 109 points, second in the Atlantic. They play against the Toronto Maple Leafs, which we know is one of those teams that they own their ass for, so it wasn't much of a series, and they get past them, but of course, that's the Panthers that knock them out again. So, they poked the bear, and they broke the bear, as I love to say the Panthers did. So, obviously, the story of this team and the San Jose Sharks and the teams like previously that are like known for these like good swings, has a good potential. The issue is that they're just not good enough. You're really good, but you're just not good enough. That's the issue with the Bruins. So had they fixed that this offseason, right? Don Sweeney, organization in Boston, what have they done to kind of fix that, right? So obviously everyone knew that they really needed that for a true number center, a number 1 or 2 centerman to help out Charlie Coyle and Pavel Zacha, right? Those two guys did a fine job of being replacements for Krejci and Bergeron, but they were not they were once again not pushing them over the line, right? They needed an upgrade in that position, and all year was speculated if they traded for Leon Draisaitl, which would be such an absurd deal, because what the hell are the Bruins going to trade away for Draisaitl without giving up something massive that makes another hole in the lineup? So it's like they can't really do that, and they don't have the cap space to sign him or anyone like that, and if they do, well, for a guy like Draisaitl or any other of those big number 1 defensemen, they have to give up a ton of money, and so they also can't really wait that amount of time. If they want a guy like Martin Necas from Carolina, which I thought was going to be their big move to do, they just don't really have any. Well, apparently they didn't do anything for that, and I guess their solution, of course, was Elias Lindholm, who is been a rather disappointing player. Now, I would talk usually about the cap situation, the signings, and the actual money value of everything, but that's not really what I think we need to focus on here, right? Because this is what the Bruins decided to go through with, right? This is the end of their plan. So usually I would go through, they have this much money left, they have this many, they need this, blah, blah, blah. Usually I do all of that, but I feel like for the Bruins, we don't need to, because this is what they did. This is the actions. So let's talk about the results. So with Lindholm easily being slotted into that top line with David Pastrnak, maybe they put together him and Marchand with Lindholm and really superpower that top line. I think that would be silly, especially for the regular season where they really need to space out the talent throughout the lineup. And you also still have Coyle and Zacha, who are pretty decent top 6 options. So you put Coyle on the second line, and you put Marchand or Pastrnak with him, someone else. The top 6 is fine, right? So Lindholm was that solution. He had 15 goals, 29 assists last year for 49 points and 44 points. I'm an idiot. And if this was 2 or 3 years ago, I would say this is a good gamble, right? Especially with the way he played with Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk, that super trio line, one of the best trios in hockey, right? Absolutely, right? He had 42 goals a couple of years ago. He had 82 points, which is the best in his career. He showed, he can be, he doesn't need to be the number 1, because that was Johnny Hockey and Tkachuk. But he was definitely the solid, centerman to anchor that line. And now, just kind of a couple years removed from that, after the abysmal year of Calgary, and then going from this year where Calgary to Vancouver, where I think he only had like 9 points or so with Vancouver, and in the playoffs he was definitely nothing special in the playoffs. Absolutely just a nothing player for the Vancouver Canucks. So for me, it's like watching his recent results, this doesn't do anything. And right now, I would say maybe he's on par with the likes of a Coyle or a Zacha, where it's like, yeah, you're fine, you're decent, you're solid, you can definitely play this role if it wasn't pivotal to make this team better, and it is at this point. And for me, it's just like, it isn't an it's a slight improvement over those guys. I would say slightly, because I think being on a more of a winning atmosphere, winning team in Vancouver, he goes from a big transition from being in Calgary for so long, not like, doesn't really know where he quite fits into the lineup, I gotta say. Like, I think maybe here, knowing he's going to be on the top line, playing with some very extremely good talent where he can feed them the puck and doesn't need to worry about really scoring goals, then I think it will work better. And it is a fine solution, but it just doesn't tilt them over the edge, right? Like, if there was a scale and it went from like lottery team, mid, wild card, playoff Stanley Cup contender, right? They're about here right now, where they're like obviously in the playoff contending zone, but they're not a Stanley Cup contender. And it's just like, where did they go with Lindholm? That much, like literally like just that far, and you need to get to here. And that's the goal of the Bruins, right? This team is not a team that is trying to rebuild or retool or something like that. They're actively trying to compete. So they add Lindholm. Now they add Nikita Zadorov, which he's interesting, because like for the Canucks, he, especially in the playoffs, he felt like he really was doing something special. But if you really look at like Zadorov's play and his numbers, he isn't really that super special. He's not like a shutdown defensive machine, and he isn't like, he's good, he's fine defensively, but he isn't extraordinary or anything. He's not going to be a saving grace. He's not someone you can put out there, and when they play against the Maple Leafs, he can shut down a line all on his own. He definitely is a guy that needs to be paired with someone else to have a solid lineup. And the Bruins defense is fine with McAvoy, Lindholm, Zadorov now. Like, they have some nice pieces there. And, of course, Lohrei, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a minute. Like, they have some decent options down there. But does Zadorov knock them over the edge again? I would say no. And then you get to Max Jones, which is a fine lineup. I mean, it's fourth liner, third liner, maybe, whatever, right? And then Jonas Korpisalo is the new addition from the Ullmark trade. He's a backup to Swayman, so not a lot of pressure needs to go on him, right? Especially since they got Brandon Busey, however you say his last name, being one of the extraordinary goalies in the AHL. So they don't really need to worry about Korpisalo. If he works out or if he doesn't, oh well. I think it's still a stupid move, and it kind of just shows the rest of this team in the direction they're going, where it's like, it's fine, but it's not good enough. And so with these additions from the outside, right, externally, what about internally, right? Lohrei, Brazeau, and Poitras, right? Poitras, whatever, Poitras. Anyway, having full seasons and more NHL ready, right? Poitras, however you say his stupid name, he had 15 points in 33 games this year, so he's like, obviously, he's half a point per game, which would be fine depth throughout the regular season. If he had 40 points going off, if you just scale that upwards, not that bad. You have Brazeau, who looked like a madman in the playoffs, like really, like maybe not got a ton of points, but he definitely looked like he's one of those guys that you need on your team that brings energy. He fights hard. He's looking to make an impact. So look out for him as well. And then Mason Lohrei, on that back end in the playoffs, he was so good. He was definitely one of, at least the most notable defenseman for me for this team. I would have to say. He was definitely, like, always out there. More than McAvoy, I felt like. Lohrei, I don't know if it was just, like, the commentators, because he's the young kid, so they're trying to hype him up, but Lohrei was definitely, like, I remember his plays, right? He was out there. He was playing hard. So, overall, right, this team, with Swayman going to go full-time this year, the core is intact. They add a little bit, but not too much. So once again, is this team a playoff team? Absolutely. It would shock the hell out of me Unless like Marchand like completely drops off a cliff and Pasternak is injured, this team should be absolutely fine to go into the playoffs, right? They're too like dense as a team, too compact, great goaltending in Swayman, and you've got like a fine enough defense, especially with some heavy hitters that are going to play a lot of big minutes, going to be able to play and shut down other teams. Like, they should be able to pick up plenty of wins this year, make the playoffs, right? That's not the question about the Bruins, though. The Bruins want to win the Stanley Cup. They want to bring home the big trophy, right? That is what they're in for, right? That is what David Pasternak is here for. David Pasternak is not here signed long-term to go through a long, excruciating rebuild, right? This team is in it to win it, right? That this is not they are going for it, right? And the issue, to me, is that are they better than last year? It's hard to tell. I mean, if Lindholm really pans out and Zadorov kind of kicks into another gear and really fits into this team, I would say maybe, but by that much. Unless Lindholm goes back to that 82-point self that he could be, then that would be a real upcharge in the ticker, right? But to me, it's are they better? It doesn't feel like it. And even if they are a little bit better, right? The question is, if we look at Vegas, the Cats, Colorado, Tampa Bay, even going back to the Blues, or even further back to the Kings and the Penguins and the Blackhawks, if you go back through the time, right, the last 15 years of the NHL, but really I'd like to focus in on now's NHL, the last 5 years. What do we see with the Stanley Cup winner, right? What do they possess? They have God. And by that, I mean they have goaltending, offense, and defense, right? I am not one that believes in one thing wins the trophy, right? I don't believe in, especially in hockey. In other sports, maybe. But in hockey, does defense win championships? Does offense win championships? Goaltending, I think you need to have all three. But I think especially you need defense. Look at Tampa Bay. When they won the Stanley Cup with Hedman, McDonough, Chernak, Sergachev, I'm forgetting someone's name, and I'm an idiot right now. And then the sixth guy was always switching in and out, right? But then on the front end of things, right, you have Cirelli, you have so many solid not all offense, you don't have Marners, right, in the playoffs at least. You have guys that are playing solid defense in the back end with a goaltender who is shutting down plays. You have to have a complete team. Look at the way Colorado won the Stanley Cup, right? In my opinion, the best team to ever win the Stanley Cup. I would be the one to say that they won by having the best defense, which was their offense. They shut down and overpowered, overskilled, outskilled every player against them on the ice and allowed no offense to be generated really against them ever in that playoff run. And look at the Panthers this year, right? They were able to slow down and suffocate every team, right? They didn't need to have the best defense in the world, but look at who they shut down. They minimalized McDavid and Kucherov and Panarin and Zibanejad and McDavid, and I know I'm forgetting Pasternak. They are able to suffocate and just kill all the air out of these other teams. And that is what the Bruins don't have. They just don't have that overwhelming team with God. They just don't. They don't have they have goaltending. Swayman can be the hottest man in the world if he already isn't. And then but the offense, right? Is the offense good enough? As much as I like the depth that they have and the potentiality of these young guns really making a great impact, do they have what it takes to overwhelm and consume all four teams to win the Stanley Cup? Against the Panthers again? You think they can do it again against, if the Maple Leafs for an 8th time in a row? You don't think that fluke is waiting to happen finally? What about if they make it far in the playoffs, they go up against the Rangers or the Devils, where there's, supreme offense? What if they make it to the finals against a team like Dallas or maybe Edmonton, right? Can they do it? I don't think so. There are better teams that are in the right place at the right time this year. And it's another case where the Bruins just didn't do enough to go over the edge. The same way that they went in 2019 against the Blues. A team that had the defense, offense, and goaltending, right? Where they was their right place at the right time with the perfect team. The Bruins, they just don't have that circumstance on their side. They just don't. And to me, it's another year where the Bruins are just going to, they don't do the right moves like in 2019 to put them over the edge, right? In 2019, were they that over the edge team that put them to the Stanley Cup? They were one game away. I would say not. I would say the Panthers were, and the Oilers, though they were one win away, they were not good enough. The best team wins the Stanley Cup. It is not a fluke who wins the Stanley Cup. It might be a fluke who makes it to the finals, but it is not a fluke who wins the final trophy. And that is what I've got to say. So thank you for watching this. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe. And if you made it this far, just do it, please. And until next time, too sweet. Have an amazing day, and ta-ta for now.